This is Jeremy Park, CEO of cityCURRENT, personally inviting you to GrowthCurrent. GrowthCurrent is our e-learning and online personal development platform with cityCURRENT. It's an opportunity to attend virtual events with global thought leaders, national guest speakers, and experts who can help you grow personally and professionally. It gives you access to success secrets, lessons learned, learning modules, and so much more. Subscriptions are only $8 a month, and you can do bulk subscriptions for your team. Check out growthcurrent.co to learn more.
Welcome to the ChangeMakers podcast, produced by cityCURRENT and brought to you by Lipscomb and Pitts Insurance. This show shares personal stories and insight from those who are giving back and making a difference so we can learn and do the same. We cover life lessons, business advice, passion, and purpose. Now here's our host, the CEO of cityCURRENT, Jeremy Park.
Welcome to the ChangeMakers podcast produced by cityCURRENT. I'm your host, Jeremy Park, and we get to literally travel around the world with this ChangeMakers interview. So we are joined by Michael Graziano. He is the youngest Canadian person and American man to travel to every country. He's also the founder of Mindful Media. So we'll dive into media and PR and all sorts of amazingness. But let's start out. Michael, how are you doing?
Hey, man. Thanks for having me. Love the enthusiasm.
Hey, well, how can you not be excited about traveling literally around the world and talking about media and marketing as well? So it's like everything combined into one amazing podcast. But the fun of this podcast is we get to know you personally, know your story, obviously everything that you're doing on the ChangeMaker side. But let's start with a little bit of your story. So talk about your childhood, where you grew up. Give us a little bit of that backstory.
Sure. Born in Houston, Texas. Moved to Vancouver, Canada when I was 1 year old. So I'm a dual citizen, which helped with the travels. I'll explain later. Normal kid, little bit of a rebel, little bit of a rule breaker. Really got some confidence, in my senior year of high school, started to believe in myself, started to read The Secret, the Napoleon Hill, started really learning about manifestation. Tried to get in, went to a business school in University of Western Ontario, got rejected from the business school, took a left turn from the business school faculty instead of a right turn. Changed my life because when I took a left turn, I walked past the exchange office. And from there, I learned about international exchange, ended up spending a year in Copenhagen. That year on my own, I applied for Burger King when I got to Copenhagen, because I didn't have enough money to live in Copenhagen. It's one of the most expensive cities in the world. My parents couldn't help me out. Burger King rejected me because I couldn't speak Danish. So actually ended up throwing parties for all the international students when they arrived to Copenhagen, and ended up making quite a bit of money from that. Ended up traveling 18 countries, introduced to this idea of country hopping, as it's easy to do in Europe. Started up a business. We did electronic t-shirts, actually. Those t-shirts that light up and are sound activated. It was a cool technology, but I thought to myself, why don't we do custom designs for companies? We should be putting Nike's logo on here. We should be doing festivals, artists, other brands, right? It's all about branding. And ended up going on Dragon's Den, the Canadian Shark Tank. Got $150,000 from Jim Tree Living, Robert Herjavec. Dropped out of school because 1 year abroad, I learned that I can learn business through trial and error and not through business school. And then I ended up doing a 3-week trip to Thailand. I was supposed to go with my girlfriend, but we ended up breaking up in between the time she bought my ticket. I was supposed to go with all my best friends. They all bailed out on me last minute. Their boss wouldn't let them. Their girlfriend wouldn't let them. So I went solo. And that changed my life. I overcame a fear of loneliness. I realized I can make friends anywhere I go. Just drop me into a hostel and let me meet other solo travelers, and we'll go on adventures together. I realized it's cheaper to travel the world than to live in Vancouver. And anyone who lives in a metropolitan city, that can resonate with them. Still to this day, cheaper to travel the world than to live in my hometown. And last one, misconceptions. I saw media, I saw a lot of fear tactics. I knew deep down the world was a good place. People were good everywhere. And I believed in the human connection. And so on the last day, I made a Facebook post saying I'm going to go to every country in the world by age 30, or I'm going to die trying. Either I do this or I cease to exist. I set fire to the ship behind me. I knew there's no plan B, so I have to do this. And that's how the concept started.
Were either of your parents entrepreneurs? Did that run in the family? Was travel a big thing growing up?
Nope.
So none of those were
Nothing.
sparks growing up.
My mom's a judge. My dad's an accountant. They're very textbook. They're very focused on school. My dad was quite disappointed when I dropped out of school. I think parents have a safety net around you. Think about it. They've formed habits to take care of you for years and years. That's the reason you're still alive today, is because those habits were well put together. And when you leave the nest, it's a scary time. So if you're going to leave the nest, you're going to have to find the courage to face your parents. But then it's a phenomenon where if you go follow your passion, you naturally become good at it. And because you've become good at it, you end up becoming a success. And then all of a sudden your parents are proud. So my dad, who disowned me when I dropped out of school, has me on the cover of Forbes framed on his wall and brags about me to all his cousins and brothers. So it's funny how it works.
So when you made the commitment, and obviously to yourself and to others by putting it out there, what then did you start kind of packing for, preparing for? Because when you start going out on that sort of adventure and you make that sort of commitment, obviously there is some planning that needs to go into this. And so talk about kind of those first formative phases of what am I going to plan for? How am I going to do this? Or is it just like, let's just go out and figure it out?
Yeah, it's definitely go with the flow and intention. I had no knowledge of creating content. I had no funding. I had nothing. My friends all kind of laughed at me. Once again, you're breaking that mold. And this is actually where press comes in. I boldly made the announcement I was going to be the youngest person to go to every country at the time in 2014. And I started hitting up the press, and I got some of them to cover the story. Once it's published in the press, all of a sudden it's real. And then I took those publications and I sent them to some of the biggest companies in the world saying, hey, I'm going to every country. Are you going to sponsor this trip and be a part of history? And all of a sudden we got some companies on board providing us with products, cash, full sponsorships. I also created a checklist. You can have anything you want in this world if you help others get what they want first. I asked the companies, what do you want? When I'm going to every country in the world, what type of content do you want? And let me go and create it for you. Think about how expensive it would be to hire a film crew to travel 193 countries just to make a commercial. It's out of budget for everyone. But if I create a checklist, they get their content at a discounted price. I get a free trip around the world. That's quite a good deal. So after I got the sponsors, I then went and found photographers and videographers to jump on board and film the project. I didn't have any camera gear. I didn't have anything. Did a Kickstarter campaign, raised $10,000 from anyone. A lot of people who I thought were my friends didn't give a penny. And some people who I haven't met in years, hadn't seen in years, were giving generous donations. It really, people come through the woodwork and you get to see who's got your back. And then 4 months after I made the Facebook post, we're off on the journey.
Give me a couple of lessons that you learned in terms of the creativity, but to your point, reaching out and saying, how can I help you? What do you want out of this? Knowing who to reach out to. So it's one thing to reach out, but strategically being able to have those conversations. And then to your point, just knowing that, like you said, in many cases, the first ones to support you aren't necessarily related to you. There's no relationship. It's just others who say, I believe in what you're going to do. Maybe I did it before and now I want to support you. Mm-hmm. What were maybe one or two lessons that you learned through that process of reaching out, but also too, who's supporting you?
Well, first off, trial and error, T&E. Remember that, T&E. Everything evolves through trial and error. Look at life and the universe. Everything evolves from trial and error, including your ideas in form of creation. So what did I do? I hit up 20 companies and I tweeted them on Twitter. I found the founders. Ray Nolan, one of the richest dudes in Ireland, sold Hostelworld for $300 million. When started Skyscanner, he's a mogul. I hit him up. Hey, Ray, I'm going to every country in the world. Can't do it without your help. Ray responds, how can I help? Okay, here we go. Yeah, you can introduce me to the CEO of Hostelworld. He gives me the intro. CEO introduced me to Chief Marketing Officer, give a full pitch. Next thing you know, we got sponsorship. So shotgun approach, trial and error. I don't know the answer. I'm going to come up with 10 solutions and one of them is going to work. Don't get emotional when the other ones don't. You're a crab fisherman. You're turning rocks all day long until you find your crabs to feed yourself and your family and your tribe. So that's what I did, T&E, and it worked. And the second thing you said, what was the second question?
Well, just in terms of, like you said, learning who supports you. So in other words, your expectations.
Yeah. Another thing is, not everyone wants to go to every country in the world. Though that's not why those people were supporting me. It's because I found the courage to face my fear. I had a person message me saying, "Hey, Mike, thanks to you, I moved in with my girlfriend." And I said, how did I inspire that? I'm trying to pitch quitting your relationship or your job and going on following your dreams. And he said, "No, I witnessed you overcome your fear and you chased your dream. And that gave me the courage to overcome my fear, which is my fear of commitment. And now I've moved in with my girlfriend and we're getting married and having kids now. And thanks to you." Another friend of mine who was my coworker, he was on the desk next to me. He watched me quit my job at this marketing company I was doing in the interim. And he watched me go and make this medieval declaration. And then he watched me go and do it. And it hits home when the dude next to you at work is now following his dreams. So that guy he left his wife and kid saying, I got to go chase this. I don't know what I'm doing, but just believe in me. His wife said, "Do what you got to do." Went to India, went on an epic journey, found a bunch of Indian developers and created a company there. He then went to New Zealand and London, got contracts for apps to build, went back to India, built them. And now he created one of the largest app companies in Canada. I think he's got 50 staff, 3 locations. He's got waterfront property with his office. And when I went to go and see the man he is today, he said, "This is in many ways thanks to you." So it's pretty remarkable what you do when you overcome your fears publicly for the world to scrutinize and also be inspired by.
So it took you 6 years, but you finished before you were 30. So you made the goal. What was the first country? And let's kind of take some of the fun highlights. So what was the first country you went to?
First country, Belize, Central America. Couple highlights, got my underwater license in an island called Utila in Honduras. Cheapest place in the world to get it. It's a party island, scuba diving island. I think $500 for 5 days training, including accommodation, barbecue, everything. Went through all Central America, volcano boarded, sledded down a volcano up to 90 kilometers an hour, 100 kilometers an hour. Life magazine said it was the second coolest thing to do in your life. The first thing is MiG fighter laser tag in Russia in fighter jets. So that cost $20,000. Volcano boarding cost $20. So it's quite a bargain. Went to Guatemala, went to a place called Sumuk Champay, Nature's Playground, place you can swing from vines, go down mossy water slides, climb up waterfalls and caves. Then went down to Panama, a place called San Blas Islands, small islands. You know those cartoons where it's an island with one palm tree? Uh-huh. Those are real. They exist. They're in the San Blas Islands. So we went from island to island, staying with these tribes, only 5 to 10 people per island. I swam out to an island that had 2 palm trees and a hammock. It's the only thing that was there. Just chilled. Went to Colombia, was there for the World Cup, partied with 50,000 Colombians when they beat Japan and Uruguay in the Brazil World Cup. Went down to Peru, captured, I still think the most remarkable time lapse of Machu Picchu recorded today. Went down to Chile, it was amazing. Bolivia, spent 3 days in a desert made out of salt. And actually you stay in hotels that are just compressed salt. We were doing some tequila shots. We didn't have any salt, so we just grabbed a pile from the ground, crushed it up, and we were drinking away.
How long are you at each city? Like how long were you in each country?
Average a week, as little as 3 days up to 1 month, depending on where we are. And then, and then we ended up in Brazil and then Guyana. And I mean, I could be here all day, but let me go by region. Central America, South America, year one. Then we decided, we figured out no woman had been to every country in the world. I went back to the sponsors saying, guys, I've tried to do this, but I ended up discovering something much bigger than me. Who wants to make history? Who wants to help this woman be the first woman on record to visit every country? The sponsors are like, where do we sign? Right. And ended up doing a contest. About 300 women from around the world competed. Ended up finding a girl named Natalia Anya, who became a photographer and joined us for a year and a half. Cassie Depecal, which is a girl who was a contestant. She said, I'm going to go do it myself. Went and got her own sponsors, did it in a year and a half, very quick. But she became the first woman to go to every country in the world. All the power to her. And anyways, we did all of Asia. Then we did all of Europe, every country in Europe. Then we did all of the Caribbean and then the Middle East. Then we did East Africa, other parts of Middle East and Central Asia, and then finished in Central and West Africa. Country 193 was Angola. And I do want to touch on the timing of it, but
go ahead. Yeah.
Okay,
questions, so they can wait. So go ahead.
I trial and error emailed a bunch of TEDx conferences, and Oxford, England got back to me saying, hey, we have a conference called A World Unbound. You've just finished going to every country. We'd love to have you as our keynote. So I flew from Angola to Oxford in February 2nd, delivered a talk, flew home to Vancouver, February 27th, 2020 was my coming home party. 7 days after I got home, the entire world shut down.
And obviously when you talk about travel, then it's not possible. And so when you talk about being able to do what you did, such a small margin for error almost in terms of wrapping up, doing it, the TEDx conference, boom. And even at the conference, I know one of the things that you mentioned in a post was that you asked everyone to kind of reach over and hug each other. And you're like, that would not be possible now without.
Had I done that a week later, I would have gone to prison.
Right.
100%. And it was so ironic. I was talking about the power of human connection. And I was at that experiment, I was getting people to hug the person to their left, fist pound the person in front of them, give a kiss on the cheek to the person to the right, tell the person behind them they love them. It's just social experiment, almost ice breaking. And at first it was awkward, and then people didn't know what to do. And then all of a sudden, every time I escalated, you'd see more energy, more laughter, more smiles, more vibe. The vibration was increasing in the room right in front of our eyes. And I said, that's it. Whatever that is, that little excitement, that bliss that comes from meeting new people, that's why I went to every country. And I that right there, I believed was going to happen everywhere in the world. That genuine excitement and that love and respect and that human connection.
Yeah.
Right.
So I got a lot of questions on these travels. One, talk about the power of being able to talk, converse without speaking the language. What was that like?
Charades. Remember that game? Body language is the international language. I had a Mongolian eagle hunter in the middle of Mongolia, in the middle of the Gobi Desert, in a yurt, which is basically like a tent, teach me how to drive a motorbike for the first time through a game of charades. And I think the whole world speaks broken English, basic things. So you can get by anywhere. And otherwise just start playing charades. It's a fun game. You'll get the hang of it.
How much going into the country did you plan in terms of the experiences versus just get there and say, okay, to a local, like what would you do, or what's crazy, or what's something different, or, to the sponsors, what they wanted different. So how much of that was kind of pre-planned versus just get there and figure it out, especially when you come to the big experiences like going down the volcano?
So in the beginning, especially when we got big sponsorships, when we got on Discovery Channel, sponsorships started to get pretty serious. And when they get serious, we want to create an itinerary like day after day. We want to make sure we're getting the most out of it. We're getting our great content for these videos. But every time you create expectation, you create the ability to disappoint people. And we were disappointing ourselves. We were disappointing sponsors. It was too rigid. And so then all of a sudden we create entry points and exit points. Okay, we're going to fly into Tanzania, climb Mount Kilimanjaro, and we're going to fly out of Namibia after, doing a camping experience for 3 weeks. So we have entry, exit, we have 28 countries in between. We have 9 months to do it. Game on. Let's rock and roll.
Was there any point that you either got sick or felt like, oh my gosh, what have I gotten myself into? Were there any of those moments?
I got dengue fever in Fiji, went to an island, which I later learned was called Mosquito Island. So that was my first mistake. The mosquitoes were like technical. They're like glowing. They were massive, like terrifying. So I doused myself in repellent. But these mosquitoes were hungry. They didn't even care about the repellent. They just went in anyways. And I got dengue fever. I was bedridden for about 2 weeks. I slept for, I think, like 72 hours straight, like pretty gnarly. Thought I got malaria in Jinja, a place next to the Nile River in Uganda. And learned something interesting. Malaria doesn't kill people as much as you think. You just take 3 pills and malaria is cured. The reason it does kill so many people is because they don't have access to the hospital. They don't have access to the 3 pills. So, when these travel agencies pitch you on a $250 malaria prevention pills that actually really mess with your dreams and with your health, there's a little bit of a trickery that goes on in there. And by the way, even if you're taking those pills, if you get bitten by a mosquito with malaria, you're still getting malaria. So anyways, that's a side note. But it turns out I just had heat stroke and strep throat at the exact same time, which was also pretty gnarly. I got a huge fever. I think it was 103 or 104. They say 105, you start to get brain damage. 106 is terminal. So it was close call.
Wow. I'm sure there were a lot, but what was maybe 1 or 2 of the places that surprised you the most in a good way?
Yeah. Bhutan, if you want to go back 1,000 years, go to a place called Bhutan, right next to Tibet. If you want to go forward 1,000 years, go to Baku, Azerbaijan, see what the future looks like. If you want to see snow-capped mountains in the middle of a desert, or frozen waterfalls in the middle of a Sahara-style desert, go to Mongolia. If you want to see millions of seals washing up on shore and literally the ocean current right next to some of the biggest sand dunes in the world, so ocean to sand dune side by side, go to Namibia. If you want to see 3 million bats leave a cave every night, it's called the Exodus. I know Corona's people don't want to be there right now, but in Malaysia, there's some other surprises. Djibouti, there's a place called Lake Assal. It's a salt lake, and any dead animals, their bones get crystallized on the beach. So you have these beautiful crystallized cow skulls and pretty far out. Again, I could go on for quite a while here.
Yeah. You have each country, each moment. There's so many stories. Did it click, or at what point did it click where this really is changing my life? So in other words, you become a different person in the way that you see the world, interact and treat others. Was there a moment, or was it just a process that it just kind of like clicked, like this is changing everything for me?
Yeah, people ask me, you've done this epic journey around the world. You must have changed so much. And my answer to them is, I haven't changed. I'm just more so myself, if that makes sense. I'm unapologetically myself. I know who I am now, and I'm okay with that. So I think you really step into who you are with travel, especially solo travel, only because you have infinite options and true freedom. Really, you are who you choose to be, especially when you're on the road and not really tied down to anyone or anything. So I think that was a big eye opener. And I think the tough times define you. It wasn't always rainbows and butterflies. We lost sponsorships. We lost camera crew. I physically lost three people who inspired Global Degree, high on life. Three of them passed away falling off a waterfall. So there's some tough times along the way. And it's during the tough times, specifically if you share these moments publicly, it's terrifying. Sharing vulnerabilities. And I'm not talking Instagram vulnerabilities where you talk about being vulnerable and it's fashionable to be vulnerable. I'm talking like going on your Facebook and admitting that you're a womanizer and admitting that you're taking advantage of women and really like just being brutally real and brutally honest, and allowing that support network and that love of that from people to, it's like you're falling, and to have people there to hold you is very therapeutic and very important. And taking your mask off only to find that you're loved just the way you are, and keeping it off. I think those moments define you and change your life.
And removing kind of that imposter syndrome and some of the things that so many people struggle with. Do you still keep in touch with, or did you form any strong relationships throughout that with others in different countries?
Oh yeah. Yeah. I got friends all over the world. Yeah. It's, some people stay in touch more than others, but when I make my Instagram stories, I can see they're all watching. So, yeah, it's really cool to have that. And I think I've impacted a lot of people's lives, whether it was just one interaction in the streets, or it was a night out or an adventure we went on. I think a lot of people have impacted my lives in ways that they'll never know. So yeah, it was a lot of that.
Give me one person who inspired you along the way, whether it was through their actions or their words. What was someone that inspired you that you met?
Yeah, I mean, there's a guy named Felipe Torres. He traveled with me when no one else believed in me. He was there by my side. He's the first Swiss person to go to every country in the world. He was there. He was a big inspiration for me, kept me going. Also, finding good humor when you're in some pretty shitty situations is important. You want to have somebody with you to laugh with. Sometimes you have to laugh because there's nothing else to do. It's either laugh or cry. So those are your choices. So I think he was a big inspiration and just kept me going in really tough times. And also an inspiring story is I go back to Mongolia because it really was life-changing. I met a guy in the middle of the Gobi Desert, and we hadn't seen a Westerner person from North America for over 3 weeks. And I saw an old white guy with a Tilly hat, ran up to him. "What brings you to Mongolia?" And he said, "Oh, I'm on a peace mission. I'm spreading the word of God." He said, "What brings you to Mongolia?" And I said, "I'm going to every country in the world, and it's on the list." And 6 months later, I get an email from a guy named Luke, and he says, "My dad just got home from a peace mission. I've been following Global Degree." And he said he met some people who go in every country, and I showed him photos, and he confirmed that he met you in the middle of the desert. "But I'm your cousin. So you met your uncle in the middle of the desert in Mongolia." And so how's that for?
Yeah. Wow. And then we'll switch over and talk about kind of the business that you're in now. What's a bit of advice that you would offer once things normalize and we're able to travel again? What's something that you would offer as encouragement for those who want to go and experience, and whether it's one trip or them traveling to other places? What's just a bit of advice when it comes to traveling and enjoying the travels? What would you offer?
I hate to say this, but it's just go. Don't listen to the media. Don't listen to your country that's giving you warnings. unfortunately, Canada has been advising me not to do things for years now, telling me to avoid Iraq and Iran and Syria. And I didn't listen to them, and I went and I had a great time. So unfortunately, you got to just see where you can go, where you're allowed to legally go and get into, and just book the flight. Obviously use common sense, obviously travel with a mask and sanitize your hands, but this is common stuff. And go out there and just knock down those countries and get those experiences and then once you've done those, new borders will open up. It's funny, I did my TED Talk on passport privilege, saying I'm not just privileged as a tall white man coming from a loving middle-class family that already puts me into a bracket, but I'm also Canadian and American. So I can walk into 183 countries without visa. Someone from South Africa, for example, Elon Musk, despite his power, his knowledge, his education, his family connections, he can only go to about 50 countries without visa. Luckily for Elon, his mom, May, was Canadian, which got him his Canadian citizenship, which then he got down to Silicon. I argue if it wasn't for May being Canadian, Elon wouldn't be Elon. So think about that for a second. Also, might I add, Steve Jobs' dad, biological father, Abdul Fattah Jandali, is from Syria. Sergey Brin is a Russian refugee seeking a Jewish asylum. He was originally from Russia. Nikola Tesla himself is from Serbia, which has a very weak passport. Imagine him unable to come to San Francisco to see his cars everywhere. So anyways, immigrants are what built America, and yet here they are with the weak passports. And what I was going to say is all of this was pre-COVID. America, I think, can only go to like 16 countries today. So you basically have what I call a reciprocity reset. Everyone has a weak passport now, and I'm interested to see the new order of power. Who's going to emerge as the strong passport leaders? Or will they all remain weak and perhaps a global citizen passport will emerge, which I actually think, if done properly, would be really exciting.
Let's dive into what you're doing now, because I want to definitely touch on this. So as I mentioned on the front end, you're the founder of Mindful Media. Describe Mindful Media, and then we'll get into some just fun kind of deep dives.
Yeah. I got home. I threw up my global degree on the wall, all my passport pages. And everyone, of course, now has a profound respect for what I've done and the fact that I never gave up. So you have people saying, what are you going to do next? Are you going to go to the depths of the ocean? Are you going to go to the moon? You off to space? Like what's next? And the social media landscape has changed quite a bit since 2014. When I started, there was no Instagram. There were no content creators. There was no influencers. I was in a blue ocean, and that blue ocean is now a red ocean covered with millions of sharks and fish. And so I like playing in the blue oceans. And so I no longer wanted to recreate my own story. Remember the quote, you can have anything you want as long as you help others get what they want first. And I can see people fighting for the microphone. I can see a congested social space. Mindful people are competing with clickbait, with fake news, with OnlyFans. And how does a person who's very mindful and conscious compete with things at those frequencies? They want to stay authentic. They want to stay true, but they don't want to compete at that level. So I created Mindful Media, and I want to help set the stage and turn on the microphone for those people. So we only work with people who are changing the world in their own way, mindful people and brands. And I help them curate their story and get it in front of the biggest press in the world. So we get people in front of New York Times, Forbes, Business Insider, et cetera, et cetera. And I help them tell their story to the masses and show up authentically and properly. And it's working. I started this company in June of last year. We now have over 150 clients. We have 9 people on our team. First time building a really big team, and I'm very proud of that. and having a lot of fun with it.
Talk about on your end, because you learn so many of these lessons in terms of being able to interact with businesses and share your story with publications and see what that was able to generate in terms of momentum. And so you built a lot of relationships, but you built a lot of knowledge. And so I think that when you carry that over to mindful media, that's exactly what you're taking, is this expertise and knowledge, but also these relationships. When you talk about with Forbes and some of these big entities, it is really driven around obviously value, but relationships and knowing who to turn and getting these stories told. And so talk about it from that vantage point of relationships. And when you talk about these stories and getting them on this mainstream broadcast media, that's a big piece of the value on your end in terms of what you're able to do that you can't replicate.
I'm a walking, talking case study of how you can leverage press to get what you want. In my case, literally get the entire world. No one's going to believe you and your goals. It's hard to really earn credibility and authority, especially in the beginning or in the startup phase. So go and, define your story and get in front of the press. Once you get the press, you can then get the sponsorships, the partnerships, the investments, right? It's more than just a trip around the world. You can get whatever you want. So I help people with that leverage game. It really is a stepping stone process. And it's very, very powerful, leveraging the media to advance your cause. And again, I know how it works. I've been playing that game for 6 years. And I also like helping people with big headline stories. Like when we play, we don't play small. I want them to conquer their world in their own way, and I help them with that.
You mentioned Blue Oceans. What are some of the different, whether it's technologies, platforms, apps, solutions? You and I were talking before we jumped into this, but about Clubhouse. What are the things that have your attention from a media standpoint? What are the things that have your attention right now looking forward? Clubhouse.
Every 5 years, there is a new paradigm shift social media app. Exactly 5 years today, we had TikTok founded in 2016. 5 years before that, we had, I think it was Snapchat was founded 2011. Exactly 5 years before that, Twitter was founded 2007. So you're noticing a trend here. Clubhouse is the new paradigm shift. It's giving the whole world a voice. You have 24/7 conferencing going on, talking about major issues and making connections and advancing knowledge like I've never seen before. I've been on for 2 weeks. I have 2,000 people following me. I have dozens of new leads, people who are looking for press and wanting to work together. I did a welcome party for Jesse Itzler. He's this, legendary owner of the NBA Atlanta Hawks, sold Marquis Jet to Berkshire Hathaway. The guy's a legend, wrote a book with David Goggins, runs marathons, managed Run DMC. I didn't know Jesse, but I knew that he was new to Clubhouse. So I reached out to the biggest club on Clubhouse saying, hey guys, Jesse Itzler welcome party. Are you in or out? And they're like, let's do it. Then I went to Jesse. Hey, Jesse, want to do a big welcome party? And he's like, let's go. And hosted the party. I think he got a couple thousand new people from it. I got some new business from it. So everyone's winning on Clubhouse, and early movers, early birds get the worm. So get on now, start playing around with it and start innovating and connecting. Once again, hold the microphone. Don't try so hard to steal the microphone and be heard. Try and hold the microphone for others. And if you can do that, you can help other people get what they want. They will reward you very, very handsomely.
Yeah, that's a perfect kind of stopping point on that end. Let's switch it over and do a lightning round, which are just short questions, short answers, just a fun chance to kind of wrap up and get to know you better. One, let's start. What's a recent book you've read?
The Untethered Soul, Michael Singer.
What do you like to do to relax?
Meditate.
What sports do you enjoy either watching or playing?
Soccer or football.
Okay, so like the soccer, not the American football, the soccer.
Yeah. Soccer, AKA for anyone outside of North America, football, which is the sport of the world.
Right, I must say, got to be clear so that people know exactly which soccer or which football you're talking about.
Yeah.
What sort of music do you enjoy listening to, especially someone who's traveled the world?
I enjoy all music. I think each one's a different vibe. I just like lo-fi hip hop. That's been my newest jam for when I'm working, when I'm just chilling.
All right. So what quote, and you don't have to say it verbatim, but what inspires you? What's a quote that inspires you? Obviously, you've shared one throughout that is personal for you, but what's another one that inspires you?
Ask and you shall receive. You need the courage to ask for big things and the gratitude to receive it.
What's a family tradition that you enjoy?
Prayers before every meal. Chance to hold hands and connect.
That's a good one. So I've been to Vancouver, and is it Coquitlam? I think I'm saying that fairly correctly.
Yeah,
Coquitlam. And so for those who would love to go to Vancouver at some point or that area, what are some favorite things that we need to go and see and experience?
I just bought 5 acres of land. I'm creating a retreat center out there. So definitely check in for that. And definitely go to the Dark Table. It's a dining in the dark experience where they hire blind people they employ them, which I think is beautiful. Go up to Whistler, spend some time up in the mountains. And then after the same day you go to Whistler, you can go suntan on a beach in Kitts Beach in Ambleside. You can go from snowboarding to suntanning on the beach on the same day. I think it's one of the only places in the world we can do that. Outside
of the area of Vancouver, where else should we go in Canada? Here's your chance to put on the tourism hat.
This is embarrassing. I haven't seen too much of Canada. I heard there's some pretty epic whale watching in, I think it's Nova Scotia. So I really need to go check that out. Halifax, Newfoundland, Nova Scotia. I think that over there is going to be interesting. Alaska, sure, you can call it America, but look at where it's located. And then going up and checking that out would be really interesting. And I think even just like the north, going north up to Northwest Territories, I think that would be fascinating. Go and just ice fishing with some like indigenous people. Like how cool would that be?
What type of foods? Let's do it this way. When you're making food, what sort of food do you like to make?
If I'm just working, it's a work day, I don't have time. I come in, I have pre-boiled eggs, chop them up, put them in a wrap, put it in some arugula, maybe some pesto, and that's it. I fast. I finish my meal by 7. I don't eat till noon. I think that's really helped with my health and my weight. And then, again, for dinner, I just do something quick, unfortunately. But if I'm preparing dinner for friends and for guests, we'll go do a nice pasta, or that's basically all I got.
Well, that's where I was going to go. If you're going out, or if you're making, you'd be like, for friends, like what sort of meal would you go? Because once again, being a world traveler, like, do you go and is it more of the pasta? Is it more of the, like, I want steak? Like what sort of, if you're going out to eat, what sort of restaurants?
Okay, well, here's some new cool things. If you haven't tried Ethiopian food, you got to go try injera. It's like a huge pancake with a bunch of different kind of sides on it. You just peel off some of it, grab whatever you want, eat it. It's delicious. Iranian food, unbelievable. Best rice and the way they cook and prepare the meats. Lebanese and Israeli is beautiful food. I think Thai food is healthy and maximum flavor. Indian food as well, you can never go wrong. Those are some of my favorites. I actually think the Japanese food is better here in Vancouver than in Japan because we have some of the freshest salmon and tuna in the world. So, but those are some suggestions.
What on your end, because I think this is something that you're creating every single day, but what on your end do you hope that your legacy is many, many years from now? What do you hope that others say about you and your legacy?
Grandpa was crazy. He went to every country. I mean, we go to every country every day, I think, but Grandpa did it when he was young and dumb and before it was cool. And Grandpa helped create the Global Citizen Passport, which allows all of us to go and see each other and learn about each other. And thanks, Grandpa, for and giving us this nice, beautiful house to grow up in and stay safe in and go take risks and do some trial and error. And Grandpa's final words before he died was, "Let's go, baby."
We'll wrap up with contact information. So where can we learn more about Mindful Media, about your efforts personally? So social media, website, where would you direct us to go?
Global Degree is the name of my travel company. On Clubhouse, I'm Global Degree. Mindful Media PR, name of our agency on online. So you know where to find us. If you guys need, if you're doing something cool for the world and you want to tell your story and get it in front of the biggest publications, I can help you with that. If you need some travel advice, I'm just a DM away.
Well, Michael, thank you for all you do, for being a change maker and being a guest on the ChangeMakers podcast. Greatly appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks so much. Yeah, this was fun. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for listening to the ChangeMakers podcast, produced by cityCURRENT and brought to you by Lipscomb and Pitts Insurance. To learn more about our guests and share your stories of others leading by example, visit us online at citycurrent.com or follow us on social media using @citycurrent. Please make sure to subscribe, rate, and review our podcast wherever you listen. Now, think big, start small, and act now. Be a change maker.